The morning everything changed did not arrive with warning signs or dramatic storms. It came quietly, wrapped in the ordinary rhythm of a workday that should have passed unnoticed. Yet something in the air felt different, an invisible tension, a subtle weight pressing down on the world before anyone understood why. In the heart of an industrial complex, a mechanic named Thomas Herrera prepared for another routine shift, unaware that he was stepping straight into the path of a truth too large and dangerous for the life he thought he knew. Across the city, in the glass tower of a multinational corporation, CEO Camila Santoro carried the calm expression people expected from her, a mask polished by discipline, authority, and emotional distance. Neither of them imagined that before the sun touched the horizon, their lives would collide in a way that would uncover identities, betrayals, and ghosts long buried beneath classified shadows. Everything began with a single altered machine, one motor sabotaged with precision so sharp it did not resemble the work of any engineer Thomas had ever known. His instincts, sharpened through years of quiet dedication, told him something was wrong, terribly wrong. But reporting what he found did not bring answers. It brought dismissal. Humiliated, blamed, and expelled from a job he had given years of loyalty to, Thomas walked out believing his life had reached a breaking point. Yet fate, silent and meticulous, had already begun to weave him into a world far beyond factory floors. A world of encrypted codes, abandoned call signs, and operations that never appeared in public records. And at the center of that world, standing cold and composed, was Camila Santoro, a woman whose past was far more perilous than her polished exterior allowed anyone to see. It happened the moment a military helicopter tore through the sky above the factory grounds, its blades slicing the air with purpose. Soldiers descended, forming a perimeter as confusion spread among the workers. But confusion turned into shock when the commanding officer called out a name that froze Camila where she stood. Not her corporate title, not her civilian identity, a code name, a ghost from a life she fought to erase. Spectre 07. The sound of it shattered the fragile barrier she had built between who she once was and who she pretended to be. And in that moment, Thomas realized that the sabotage he discovered had never been about machinery. It had been a summons, one designed to drag Camila back into a battlefield she never wanted to revisit. As soldiers pulled Thomas into the operation, declaring him both asset and target, he felt the ground crumble beneath his understanding of the world. Yet even through fear, he saw something no one else had noticed. The flicker of pain behind Camila's composed expression, the silent fracture that appeared when her past caught up to her. He saw a woman carrying scars no title could shield her from. A woman who, despite her cold exterior, stood on the edge of a storm she had once barely survived. And somewhere in that fractured moment, their fates became intertwined. Not by choice, not by desire, but by the design of an enemy who knew exactly how to break her. What neither of them knew was that this confrontation would force them into a labyrinth of old betrayals, encrypted threats, and a rival agent known only as Spectre 03, a man whose disappearance years ago detonated the collapse of an entire covert unit. Now he had resurfaced, dragging Thomas and Camila into a dangerous game where every clue cut deeper than the last. If stories like this grip your curiosity, hold your breath and stay until the end. Because what begins as sabotage will unravel into a revelation capable of rewriting everything they thought they knew. And the first battle begins now. The sun had barely risen when Thomas Herrera stepped onto the factory floor, expecting nothing more than another long day surrounded by metal, machinery, and the predictable rhythm of industrial life. The hum of engines, the sharp smell of lubricant, and the faint vibration of heavy equipment under his boots were familiar comforts, grounding him in a world that made sense. But that morning, something felt different, an unease he couldn't name, a tension in the air that clung to his skin like static. He moved through the corridors with practiced efficiency, greeting coworkers who barely glanced up, unaware of the storm silently assembling around them. When he reached his workstation, he noticed an engine component positioned oddly, as if someone had touched it without knowing how it was meant to sit. And in that small, nearly imperceptible detail, the first thread of his ordinary life began to unravel. Thomas leaned closer to inspect the motor, his brow furrowing as his fingers traced lines and bolts that didn't match the previous day's configuration. Something had been altered, subtly, intentionally, almost invisibly. The torque was off, the alignment slightly skewed. The pressure readings were inconsistent with the system logs stored the night before. Most workers would have dismissed it as a routine discrepancy. But Thomas wasn't like most workers. His instincts, honed through years of diagnosing problems before they grew catastrophic, warned him that this was no mistake. Whoever had manipulated this machinery knew exactly what they were doing, and they had done it with precision far beyond the skill set of anyone employed at the facility. A chill traced down his spine as he realized this tampering didn't resemble civilian handiwork at all. It felt engineered, calculated, military. Carrying photographs and a written report, Thomas made his way to the supervisor's office, convinced he was doing the responsible thing. But the moment he stepped inside, he was met with a familiar wall of irritation and dismissiveness. His supervisor, a man more interested in avoiding complications than solving them, did not even look up from his screen before sighing dramatically. "What is it now, Herrera?" Thomas laid out the evidence, every detail, every inconsistency, every sign that the motor had been deliberately sabotaged. But instead of concern, he was met with impatience. The supervisor interrupted him repeatedly, brushing off each point as exaggeration or incompetence. Every sentence Thomas spoke seemed to strengthen the supervisor's resolve to ignore him. And as the minutes passed, Thomas understood he wasn't reporting a problem. He was becoming the problem. When the supervisor finally pushed the documents aside, the gesture was sharp and final, like a judge delivering a sentence. "This," he declared, "is nothing more than your negligence." The accusation hit Thomas with unexpected force. Negligence? After years of dedication, precision, responsibilidad? He stared at the supervisor, stunned by the injustice. The man crossed his arms, glaring with the brittle confidence of someone who feared taking responsibility more than being wrong. Thomas tried again, this time more calmly, more firmly, explaining the technical impossibility of such a mistake occurring naturally. But logic had no place in that office. The supervisor had already chosen the narrative that best protected him, and Thomas, despite his integrity, was being shoved into the role of the scapegoat. The situation escalated quickly. Security was called without hesitation, and before Thomas could regain his footing in the argument, 2 guards entered and confiscated his tools. Workers outside the office watched in stunned silence as he was escorted through the factory like a criminal. Shame burned beneath his skin, mixing with frustration and disbelief. He had given everything to this job, every early morning, every late shift, every ounce of skill he possessed. And in return, he was humiliated publicly, discarded without a moment's consideration. But beneath the humiliation, another emotion stirred, quiet, simmering, resolute. He knew what he saw. He knew the sabotage was real, and no amount of denial from authority would change that truth. Outside the factory doors, Thomas sat on a concrete bench, trying to make sense of the morning's events. His suspension felt unreal, like a bad dream he would soon wake from. But the weight of uncertainty pressed against his ribs, growing heavier with each passing second. If the sabotage was intentional, and he was certain it was, then someone had risked equipment, infrastructure, and people to send a message he couldn't yet decipher. Why? Why target an industrial motor? Why hide the tampering so precisely? Why make it appear accidental unless the goal was something deeper? As these questions swirled through his mind, a low vibration trembled through the ground beneath his feet, subtle at first, then stronger, rhythmic. A sound he had heard only in movies. Thomas stood abruptly, scanning the sky. Around him, workers stepped out of the building, murmuring in confusion as the vibration grew into a full, thunderous roar. The wind shifted violently, whipping dust and debris across the courtyard. Then the silhouette appeared, dark, imposing, unmistakable. A military helicopter descended with surgical precision, its rotors slicing the air as soldiers positioned themselves at the ready. Thomas's heart pounded. Military? Here? For what? The scene felt absurdly surreal, a collision between his simple working life and a world he had never been meant to witness. Yet something in his gut whispered that this arrival was no coincidence. It was connected to the motor, connected to the sabotage, connected to everything. The moment the helicopter touched ground, soldiers fanned out swiftly, forming a secure perimeter. Conversations died. Movements froze. It was as if the factory had become a stage, and every person present had been forced into the role of silent witness. And then Thomas saw her. Camila Santoro, CEO of the corporation, stepping onto the courtyard with the same poise she carried in boardrooms around the world. Her blonde hair whipped in the wind, her expression unreadable, her posture rigid as she approached the soldiers. But there was something beneath her polished exterior, something Thomas had never noticed before. Not fear, not confusion, recognition. Whatever was happening, she knew. Thomas watched her closely. Her composure did not crack, but her eyes, sharp, cold, calculating, betrayed the truth. She wasn't surprised by the helicopter. She wasn't startled by the soldiers. She wasn't confused by the urgency. She was bracing herself. The way someone braces for the return of a nightmare they thought they had escaped. As the commander stepped forward and saluted her, Thomas felt something shift in the air, an almost electric tension that made the hair on his arms rise. The commander inhaled deeply, preparing to speak, and Thomas, for reasons he could not explain, held his breath. The words that followed carved themselves into Thomas's memory like stone. Spectre 07. The commander announced, his voice resounding across the courtyard. Identify yourself. The impact was immediate. Camila froze. Thomas froze. The world froze. In that instant, every assumption Thomas had ever made about her shattered. She wasn't just a CEO. She wasn't just a figure of authority.
She was something else, something hidden, dangerous and profoundly entangled with the sabotage he had uncovered. And whatever Spectre 07 meant, Thomas knew nothing in his life would ever be the same.
The courtyard felt suspended in time, as if every sound, every breath, and every heartbeat had been swallowed by the single name that echoed through the air. Spectre 07. Camila Santoro did not move, but the subtle stiffening of her posture revealed the force of the impact beneath her outward composure. Thomas stared, unable to reconcile the woman he thought he knew, a demanding, elegant corporate leader, with the unknown identity that had just been dragged into the open. The soldiers around them held formation, waiting, watching. The workers froze, eyes darting between Camila and the commander. And for Thomas, a realization crept in with chilling clarity. Whatever had been altered in that motor was not meant for sabotage. It had been a trigger, a beacon, a summons for a version of Camila that was never meant to return. The commander took a measured step forward, his voice firm and unyielding. Spectre 07, identify yourself, he repeated. There was no hesitation in his tone, only authority and expectation. Camila lifted her chin slightly, her expression a perfect mask carved from the remains of an old discipline. That name no longer exists, she replied, her voice calm but laced with a strain that only someone truly watching would detect. The commander's jaw tightened. That call sign belongs to you, as long as you breathe. Gasps rippled among the onlookers. Thomas felt as though he were witnessing a confrontation between two worlds, one she built and one she fled. And the world she fled was winning. Ma'am, please step forward, the commander instructed. Camila obeyed with the poise of someone who had taken orders like these before, someone who once lived in a universe ruled by secrecy, hierarchy, and shadow operations. Thomas's pulse hammered at the realization. She was not denying she was Spectre 07. She was denying what that name demanded of her. As she stood before the commander, the wind whipped strands of hair across her face, but her eyes remained sharp, steady. State the reason for your presence here, she demanded, reverting instinctively to an authoritative tone that did not belong to a CEO. The commander exhaled through his nose. We detected infiltration within your factory. Classified technology was accessed, and the signature traces back to Spectre 03. The name struck Camila harder than the title Spectre 07 had. Thomas saw it, just for a moment, an unmistakable fracture in her facade. Her pupils constricted, her breath shallowed, and a shadow crossed her features like a memory she wished she could erase. No, she whispered, almost involuntarily. He can't be active. The commander stiffened. He is, and he's using this facility as a message pipeline. A message for you. Thomas felt a chill spread across his spine. He had uncovered part of that message in the manipulated motor, and now the pieces aligned with terrifying clarity. Whoever Spectre 03 was, he wasn't just a saboteur. He was someone who knew Camila intimately, someone who wanted her attention, someone dangerous. The commander turned toward Thomas. "You, step forward." The abrupt order jolted him. Soldiers shifted, ready to enforce it if he hesitated. Thomas approached slowly, eyes wide with confusion and disbelief. "You inspected the compromised engine?" the commander asked. Thomas nodded. "Yes. I found discrepancies that didn't match the logs." The commander studied him. "You recognized a pattern no civilian should have been able to detect, which means the infiltrator anticipated that someone like you would notice." Thomas's chest tightened. "What does that mean?" The commander's answer was a cold blade. "It means you are now part of this operation, whether you want to be or not." Camila's eyes snapped toward Thomas with a mixture of alarm and frustration. She took a step closer to the commander. "He is a civilian. He should not be involved." But the commander shook his head. "Spectre 03 has already involved him. The moment he discovered the tampering, he became a liability and a target." Thomas's heartbeat stuttered. "A target? For who?" "For a rogue operative who manipulated military-grade systems like a ghost slipping between shadows." He swallowed hard, resisting the urge to curse the chain of events that had led him here. The commander continued. "Your presence complicates matters, but it also gives us insight. You saw what he wanted someone to see." The tension thickened as Camila turned to Thomas. Her eyes, usually cold, distant, unapproachable, held something new. Conflict, regret, a flicker of fear she refused to show outwardly. "You shouldn't have been dragged into this," she murmured, her voice low enough that only he could hear. Thomas felt a strange surge of defiance. "I didn't choose it," he replied quietly. "But you didn't choose this either, did you?" Camila did not answer. Her silence spoke louder than any affirmation. It told him that her past was heavier than the title she wore, more dangerous than any business war she could have fought. And whoever Spectre 03 was, he wasn't just attacking a system. He was attacking her. The commander cleared his throat. "Spectre 07, you must come with us." And he pointed to Thomas, "comes too." A collective gasp rippled through the workers. Thomas stared in disbelief. "Me? What?" The commander replied bluntly. "Because Spectre 03 knows your face now, knows you saw his work. Leaving you here puts you directly in his path." Camila clenched her jaw. "He's not trained for this." The commander countered. "Neither were half the recruits before they learned to survive." Thomas's knees weakened. Was this real? Was he being drafted into a shadow war because he had the misfortune of being good at his job? Camila exhaled slowly, then faced the commander with renewed composure. "If he goes with us," she said, "I will cooperate fully." The commander nodded. The negotiation accepted. Soldiers moved into position, surrounding both Thomas and Camila as if they were assets being transported rather than individuals caught in the wrong place at the worst possible time. Thomas's chest tightened as the gravity of the situation sank in. His life had changed in the span of a single morning, from a mechanic defending his integrity to a key witness in an operation involving rogue agents and hidden identities. Camila glanced at him again, her expression unreadable but undeniably human. For a moment, the world shrank to the silent understanding between them. As the soldiers guided them toward the helicopter, the wind tore at their clothes, the roar of the rotors drowning out the whispers of the stunned workers behind them. Thomas felt the pull of fear and confusion twisting in his gut, but alongside it was something unexpected, a sense of purpose, or perhaps inevitability. Camila stepped into the aircraft without hesitation, her silhouette strong against the harsh light. Before entering, she spoke softly, just loud enough for him to hear. "From this moment on, nothing will be the same." Thomas swallowed, realizing the truth in her words. And with that, their descent into a world of shadows truly began. The helicopter lifted off with a violent rush of air, pushing dust and loose debris across the factory courtyard as the world below shrank into a patchwork of gray concrete and trembling silhouettes. Inside the aircraft, Thomas sat rigidly in his seat, hands clenched, pulse hammering against his ribs. Across from him, Camila Santoro remained utterly composed, too composed. Her gaze was fixed on the closed ramp, but her eyes were distant, as if staring through time instead of metal. The name Spectre 07 kept echoing in his mind, heavy and unsettling. He wanted to ask her who she really was, why she had such a name, what exactly she had done to carry a title that sounded more like a weapon than an identity. But the steel wall around her expression warned him that the truth was buried deep beneath years of silence. The commander stood near the cockpit, reviewing encrypted transmissions on a small portable console. "We intercepted additional signals after your departure," he announced. "Spectre 03 is accelerating his timeline." Camila's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, her hands folding with deliberate control. "Of course he is," she murmured. "He always escalates when he thinks he has the advantage." Thomas glanced between them, recognizing the familiarity in their exchange. This wasn't just a mission briefing. This was personal history resurfacing. He shifted in his seat, unease tightening in his chest. The commander continued, "Your involvement changes the dynamic. He left your factory tampering, deliberately sloppy in places." Camila's eyes narrowed sharply. "Sloppy?" she repeated. "He doesn't make mistakes." Thomas hesitated before speaking. "Then why would he leave something I could detect?" Camila turned toward him slowly, her icy composure cracking just enough to reveal the weight behind her thoughts. "Because he wanted you to find it," she said. Her voice carried a subtle tremor, like a truth she hated acknowledging. "You were never a random mechanic." "Not to him." Thomas's breath caught. "But I've never met this man," he protested. "I don't even know who he is." Camila shook her head. "Spectre 03 studies patterns, behavior, systems. He doesn't choose targets randomly." She looked directly into his eyes for the first time since the ordeal began. "He chose you for a reason." The commander stepped closer. "You recognized an anomaly our scanners failed to flag. That alone puts you on his radar." Thomas felt a cold pressure settle in his stomach. He had always been meticulous, always observant, always attuned to the smallest deviations in machinery, but he never imagined those traits would draw the attention of a rogue operative. "So what am I supposed to do?" he asked, voice barely steady. Camila crossed one leg over the other, posture elegant yet battle-ready. "Stay close. Do exactly as I say, and never assume safety, even for a second." Her tone was not unkind, but it was brutally honest. For a moment, Thomas saw the soldier beneath the CEO, the strategist beneath the business leader. And he understood why Spectre 07 was a name that belonged to her. Silence settled briefly inside the helicopter, broken only by the steady thrum of the rotors. Then the commander projected a hologram showing a scrambled sequence of digits pulsing in red. "This was transmitted shortly before we arrived at your facility." Camila leaned forward, eyes scanning the pattern with the precision of someone reading a language others could barely decipher. After a long, tense moment, she exhaled. "This isn't a threat," she said softly. "It's a challenge." Thomas frowned. "A challenge for what?" Camila didn't immediately answer. Her eyes darkened with recognition. "He's testing me, pushing me, trying to force a response." She thinned her lips. "Spectre 03 knows exactly how to provoke the version of me I swore never to be again." Thomas watched her closely, watched the way her shoulders stiffened, watched the slight tremor in her breath. "Why did you leave that world?" he finally asked. "What happened between you and him?" Camila held his gaze for several seconds, weighing how much truth she was willing to share. When she finally spoke, her voice was steady but painfully restrained. "We were part of the same covert unit," she began. "We trained together, operated together, survived missions no one else could handle." She paused, swallowing hard. "Then he changed, and the system we worked for changed. Lines blurred, orders shifted, and when the world we served became something he couldn't accept, he broke away." The commander added quietly, "Deserted." And he didn't leave quietly. Camila's eyes drifted toward the floor as memories flickered behind them. Memories she had spent years locking away. "His departure nearly destroyed the unit," she whispered. "And it destroyed something else along the way." Thomas's pulse quickened. He sensed there was more, painful, personal, dangerous, but she didn't elaborate. Instead, she straightened her spine, shutting the door to the past as swiftly as she had opened it. The commander continued the briefing, detailing intercepted frequencies and shadow movements tracked near government infrastructure. But Thomas barely heard him. His mind remained on Camila's silence, on the tremor she tried to hide, on the connection between Spectre 07 and Spectre 03 that seemed carved from old wounds and unfinished consequences. Paragraph 8. Another hologram appeared, showing a distorted signature repeating at intervals. He's sending more signals, the commander confirmed. Each one encoded in patterns only someone from your former unit would recognize. Camila leaned in, brows furrowed as she decoded pieces of the transmission in real time. This isn't random, she whispered. He's guiding us. Thomas blinked. Guiding us where? Camila's mouth tightened. To him. To wherever he's waiting. A chill coiled down Thomas's spine. And we're just following his trail? She nodded once. There's no other choice. Ignoring him won't stop him. It will only make him escalate. Thomas felt a surge of dread. Whoever Spectre 03 was, he orchestrated chaos like someone conducting a symphony. The helicopter jolted as turbulence hit, shaking them briefly before stabilizing. Thomas gripped the straps beside him, trying to steady his breath. Camila remained unshaken, but her eyes flickered with the awareness of unseen dangers. You need to understand something, she said to Thomas, her tone razor-sharp but not unkind. Spectre 03 doesn't act without a deeper agenda. Everything he does is layered. Everything has meaning. Thomas nodded slowly, absorbing her words. Then what does sabotaging a motor accomplish? Camila answered with quiet certainty. It forces my hand. It drags me back into the open. It puts us both on the board. Her gaze hardened. Spectre 03 never sets a board without choosing his endgame first. As the helicopter descended toward a restricted military base nestled between mountain ridges, Thomas felt the weight of the mission settle around him like a tightened harness. Camila snapped her seatbelt open, her expression shifting subtly, becoming sharper, colder, more controlled. The transformation was unsettling yet magnetic. She was entering a world where she didn't need to pretend anymore. A world where Spectre 07, not Camila Santoro, was required. When the ramp lowered and wind rushed inside, she stood and looked back at Thomas, her voice steady but edged with something unspoken. Stay close, she warned. This is only the beginning. And with that, they stepped into the heart of the storm Spectre 03 had engineered for them. The moment Thomas stepped onto the military base, he felt the atmosphere shift, dense, charged, built from layers of secrecy that civilians were never meant to witness. Metal towers loomed overhead like silent sentinels, their antennas pointed toward the clouds as if listening for invisible threats. Soldiers moved in coordinated patterns, each step echoing discipline honed through years of training. Screens flickered behind glass panels, displaying encrypted data streams that pulsed with urgency. Camila walked slightly ahead of him, her posture transforming with every step. She no longer resembled the polished CEO who commanded boardrooms, but rather the operative she once had to be, focused, calculating, aware of every detail around her. And though Thomas tried to steady his breath, he could feel the base studying him like an anomaly. He didn't belong there. Yet somehow, he was now essential. Paragraph 2. Inside the operations hall, lights glowed cold and clinical. Holographic displays projected shifting maps, tactical overlays, and sequences of red-coded alerts. Thomas stood quietly, absorbing everything with wide eyes that betrayed both fascination and fear. Camila, however, stepped into the environment with unsettling ease, as though her instincts had returned on command. Several analysts glanced at her with a mixture of shock and recognition. One whispered, "Spectre 07? After all these years?" She ignored them, her gaze fixed on the central table where a large projection revealed the manipulated motor, the encoded transmissions, and the digital footprint linking them. The commander gestured toward the display. This is what Spectre 03 used to reactivate a dormant channel. Thomas felt a chill. This wasn't sabotage. It was communication. Paragraph 3. Camila approached the console, her fingers gliding across its surface with the precision of someone who had done this thousands of times. She zoomed into the pattern, her blue eyes narrowing. He embedded a secondary cipher, she murmured, not visible to untrained eyes. Thomas stepped closer, trying to follow even a fraction of what she was seeing. What does it say? The commander answered instead. We don't know yet. Camila shook her head. You won't crack it without context. This isn't a tactical code. It's personal. Thomas felt the weight of her words. Personal. That single word suggested history, emotion, and danger intertwined. Whatever Spectre 03 wanted, it wasn't simply to destabilize a system. He wanted her attention, and he had succeeded. Paragraph 4. The commander crossed his arms. Spectre 03 resurfacing like this after so long. It means he wants something. Something only you can interpret. Camila didn't look up from the projection. He wants to finish what he started. Thomas frowned. What exactly did he start? She paused, and for a brief moment, he saw conflict flicker behind her composed exterior. He questioned the unit, questioned the system, questioned the morality behind the missions we were assigned. The commander interjected with sharpness. He went rogue. But Camila countered softly. He didn't snap. He calculated. A silence grew heavy in the room. Thomas realized that to understand Spectre 03, he first needed to understand Spectre 07. And the woman standing before him held scars deeper than she allowed anyone to see. The hologram shifted again, displaying the irregular electrical readings Thomas had noticed in the motor. This sequence here, Thomas said hesitantly, pointing toward the pattern, was deliberately misaligned. Like someone wanted it discovered. Camila looked at him with a flicker of genuine surprise, a rare and unguarded reaction. Yes, she said quietly. He knows how I think. He knows I would trace the anomaly. The commander raised an eyebrow. But how would he know this civilian would recognize it too? Camila studied Thomas with an intensity that made his breath hitch. Because Spectre 03 studies behavior, profiles minds. He must have predicted that someone with your observational patterns would become an unintended key. Thomas swallowed hard. He wasn't chosen by accident. He had been calculated into the equation. A technician hurried over, holding a tablet. Ma'am, another signature appeared. Camila examined the pulsing sequence. It was faint, subtle, almost like a whisper hidden beneath digital noise. This is his, she said immediately. He's leaving breadcrumbs. Thomas stepped closer. Breadcrumbs leading where? Camila's eyes darkened. To wherever he wants the confrontation. The commander looked uneasy. Why reveal his position at all? Camila's voice lowered. Because Spectre 03 doesn't fear being found. He fears being ignored. Thomas's pulse quickened. The thought of someone orchestrating all this just to force her into a specific path was chilling. And yet, he sensed something else in her tone, an undercurrent of grief disguised as strategy. There's more, the technician added. The pattern includes an emotional vector. Thomas blinked. An emotional what? Camila explained. It's a type of coded message only used between paired operatives, those who worked so closely together that they developed synchronized communication styles. Spectre 03 and I used it in the field. The hall grew quiet. Thomas felt something tug painfully in his chest, though he couldn't explain why. So this message isn't just tactical? She shook her head. No, it's personal. Deeply. The commander muttered a curse under his breath. He's trying to destabilize you. Camila didn't deny it. He already knew how. And with that admission, her mask cracked, just slightly. Thomas stepped closer, lowering his voice so only she could hear. You don't have to do this alone. Her eyes flicked toward him, guarded but touched by something fragile beneath. You don't understand what he's capable of. Thomas held her gaze. Then explain it. Let someone else carry even a fragment of that weight. For a moment, Camila's breath faltered. No one, not the commander, not her former unit, not anyone in her corporate world, had ever offered to stand beside her without calculation. But before she could answer, the console beeped sharply. A new projection expanded, revealing a geographical outline marked with a pulsing red dot. A location, a summons, a door opening back into the darkness she once escaped. Camila inhaled sharply. This coordinate. I know it. The commander stiffened. Where does it lead? She closed her eyes briefly, as if bracing herself for the impact of memory. To one of our old extraction sites. A place we used for testing endurance and psychological resilience. Thomas's stomach twisted. Testing resilience? That sounds cruel, she finished. Because it was. The commander slammed a fist lightly against the table. He wants you isolated. Vulnerable. Camila nodded. And he wants me to choose to go. Thomas felt panic tightening his chest. Then don't. But her response was quiet, resolute. If I don't follow the trail, he'll escalate. And innocent people will pay the price. The commander gave a reluctant nod. Prepare yourselves. You depart soon. Camila straightened, her posture sharpening into the controlled poise of a soldier stepping back into a battlefield she once swore to leave behind. Thomas felt the gravity of the moment settle over him. Thick, suffocating, irreversible. As the room buzzed with movement, analysts pulling files and soldiers mobilizing, Camila turned to him one last time. "If you come with me," she said softly, "you enter a world that never lets you leave unchanged." Thomas met her gaze, feeling fear and something stronger. "I'm already in it," he replied. And with those words, their path toward the inevitable confrontation was set. The smaller transport aircraft awaited them at the far end of the base, its angular frame designed for stealth and rapid deployment. Thomas followed Camila up the ramp, each step heavy with the knowledge that he was walking deeper into a world far removed from anything he understood. Inside, the lights were dim, the air cold, and the seats arranged for operatives accustomed to moving in silence. Camila secured her harness with practiced efficiency, her expression unreadable, composed. Thomas struggled with his own restraints, his hands slightly unsteady until she leaned over to assist him. For a moment, he caught a glimpse of something human behind her hardened exterior, a flicker of concern, unexpectedly gentle. But just as quickly, she retreated back into the disciplined shell of Spectre 07. And Thomas knew, whatever lay ahead, he was no longer just an observer. Once airborne, the commander activated a tactical screen embedded in the aircraft wall. "Let's review what we know," he said. The holographic motor projection reappeared, overlaid with streams of encrypted data. Camila leaned forward, her eyes narrowing as she traced the embedded code. Thomas watched, baffled and fascinated. "Every alteration follows a behavioral signature," she explained. "He wants to be recognized." Thomas frowned. "Recognized by who?" "You." She nodded once. "He's drawing me out," the commander added. "He also manipulated it just enough for Herrera to detect." "Meaning Spectre 03 anticipated your presence too." Thomas blinked, the thought colder than the aircraft air. "Why me?" Camila answered without hesitation. "Because he wants unpredictability on the board, and you are the variable he calculated, but cannot fully read." The idea unsettled Thomas deeply. "So I'm leverage?" he asked quietly. Camila hesitated before answering. "No, your opportunity." Her tone was steady, but behind it lay a truth she hadn't voiced. Spectre 03 didn't choose targets randomly. He studied people like moving pieces in a living system. Thomas had been identified, observed, and inserted into the equation long before he ever touched that motor. The realization made his skin prickle. The commander projected another encrypted pattern. "We intercepted this minutes after we lifted off." The symbols pulsed rhythmically, almost like a heartbeat encoded in light. Camila stiffened. "That's not just a signature. That's his cadence." Thomas shivered. Cadence. As if Spectre 03 were speaking in a language only she could hear. The commander leaned in. "Can you decode it?" Camila exhaled slowly. "Partially. He's referencing the extraction mission." Thomas turned toward her. "The one where he disappeared?" She nodded, her expression hardening. "He's rewriting history, sending signals through fragments of our past operations." Thomas tried to connect the dots. "So he's communicating through memories?" Camila considered his words. "Through shared trauma, shared training, shared failures, yes." Her voice carried weight, heavy with old wounds Thomas had not yet glimpsed. "Every transmission is a reminder of what I couldn't stop." The commander interjected sharply. "Of what none of us could stop." But Camila's silence implied she did not agree. A new image appeared, an overhead map of the sabotaged motor's internal wiring, now color-coded to highlight abnormalities. Thomas leaned closer. "There," he said, pointing. "Those connections were deliberately weakened." Camila followed his finger. "You're right. And look, this configuration mirrors one of our field cipher templates." The commander frowned. "But why mirror something only your unit would recognize?" Camila answered calmly. "Because he wants a conversation no one else can enter." Thomas felt a chill spread through him. "So the message wasn't for the military. It was for you." Camila met his eyes, and the softness there was brief but painfully real. "Yes, and for the first time, he's letting someone else see it." Paragraph 6. The aircraft vibrated as they crossed a turbulence pocket, but the tension inside the cabin remained far more volatile than the air outside. Spectre 03 is improvising, the commander muttered. But Camila shook her head. No, he's orchestrating. She studied the next code segment, and her face paled slightly. This is the beginning of a loop. Thomas blinked. A loop? She explained. A communication pattern that repeats until answered. He won't stop until I respond. The commander cursed under his breath. He's forcing us into contact. Thomas felt his throat tighten. The idea of Camila confronting this man, this ghost, felt wrong. Dangerous. But when he looked at her, he realized something else. She feared the encounter far less than she feared what he might reveal. A soldier approached with a handheld device. Ma'am, we analyzed the metadata. Spectre 03 embedded an emotional algorithm in the second signal. Thomas raised an eyebrow. An emotional algorithm? Camila explained. It's a pattern designed to evoke specific psychological responses. Thomas swallowed. And what response is he trying to evoke from you? Her expression darkened. Memory. The commander's face tightened. He's weaponizing sentiment. Camila nodded slowly. He always did. Thomas leaned closer, unable to contain the question forming inside him. Camila, what was he to you? She froze. Her eyes shifted away. And that silence, heavy, raw, told Thomas more than words ever could. Before he could press further, the screen flashed again, this time revealing a timestamp and a shifting coordinate. He's on the move, the commander said. Or guiding us to believe he is, Camila added. Spectre 03 excels at misdirection. Thomas ran a hand through his hair. Then how do we know what's real? She turned toward him. By understanding him. His patterns. His motives. Thomas felt frustration simmer inside him. But I don't understand any of this world. Camila softened, just slightly. You're learning faster than you think. There was sincerity in her voice. Unexpected, grounding. And for the first time, Thomas realized she wasn't just tolerating him. She was relying on him. The aircraft began its descent toward a secondary operations zone. Camila stood once more, steady and poised despite the emotional tension threading through her. Thomas watched her, unable to look away. She was elegance forged through discipline, strength carved through survival. Yet beneath the hardened armor of Spectre 07 was a woman carrying burdens she had never shared. What happens now? Thomas asked quietly. Camila answered without turning. Now we prepare for contact. His pulse quickened. With him? She nodded. With the past he intends to resurrect. The commander added. And with the consequences that come with reopening a wound this old. As the landing ramp opened and cold air swept in, Camila finally faced Thomas fully. Listen carefully, she said. Spectre 03 wants a reaction from me. But what he doesn't expect is that you will be there. Thomas blinked, stunned. Me? Why would that matter? She stepped closer, her voice lowering into something intense. Because you see what others overlook. Because you break patterns. And because he has not accounted for you the way he thinks. Thomas swallowed hard. So what's my role? Camila held his gaze. To stand beside me when the past comes for us. And with that, the next stage of their descent began. The secondary operations zone was carved into the mountainside, its corridors narrow and dimly lit, as though the structure itself preferred to stay hidden from the world above. Thomas followed closely behind Camila, his footsteps echoing alongside hers as they descended deeper into the facility. Soldiers guarded every junction, scanning them with silent acknowledgement. The air smelled of cold stone and charged electricity, thick with the hum of machines constantly processing encrypted data. Thomas felt out of place among the rigid discipline of trained operatives. Yet the commander's lingering glances told him he was no longer a guest. He was an asset. Camila walked ahead with precise, confident strides, neither hurried nor hesitant, but her shoulders carried a subtle tension that Thomas had learned to recognize. The past was stirring around her, and every step seemed to pull her closer to it. At the end of a long hallway, reinforced steel doors slid open, revealing a command chamber lined with holographic consoles and surveillance grids. Analysts monitored the projections, each screen displaying shifting coordinates, encrypted signals, and anomaly alerts tied directly to Spectre 03. Camila approached the central table, where an enlarged version of the latest transmission pulsed in a steady, ominous rhythm. One of the analysts addressed her respectfully. Spectre 07. This latest code contains elements we've never seen before. She ignored the title, though Thomas noticed the subtle flinch behind her composed expression. Show me, she ordered. The display expanded, revealing symbols fractured into layers of meaning. Thomas watched her study the patterns with unnerving intensity, her eyes narrowing as old instincts resurfaced. Spectre 03 is exploiting an old operational cipher, Camila said, her fingers tracing the sequence midair. But he's altered it in ways only someone who knows the original structure could attempt. The commander leaned in. He's trying to re-establish the old link. Camila nodded. A link we severed years ago. Thomas felt a knot form in his stomach. Why would he want to reconnect with you now? Camila's jaw tightened. Because he believes something was left unfinished. Thomas frowned. But what exactly was unfinished? She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she stared at the projection with distant eyes, as though reliving something she had fought hard to bury. A mission, she finally said, and a betrayal. A low alarm chimed, and the lighting shifted to red-tinted dimness. Incoming microtransmission, an analyst announced. The hologram flickered, replaced by a new pattern, simpler, sharper, unmistakably intentional. Camila inhaled sharply. This one is a direct address. Thomas leaned closer, heart pounding. What does it say? She decoded it quietly, each word landing with chilling precision. Follow the path you abandoned. The commander cursed under his breath. Thomas felt a surge of dread creep through his ribs. What path? He asked. Camila's gaze dropped to the floor for a single, vulnerable second. The path that turned him into what he is now. And with that, the room grew colder. As analysts dissected the new code, Camila stepped aside, retreating to a quieter corner of the chamber. Thomas followed instinctively, sensing her need for space, but also her need for someone to anchor her in the present. She stood with her back to the room, eyes fixed on the faint reflection in the glass panel before her. You're thinking something, he said softly. She didn't turn. I'm remembering. Thomas hesitated. Does it hurt to remember him? Camila closed her eyes. Memories aren't the problem. What hurts is knowing he became this because of choices we made together. Her voice cracked, barely audible, but it was the first time Thomas had heard raw emotion slip past her armor. It felt like witnessing a fracture that should never have been exposed. The commander approached them, his tone brisk, but his eyes more compassionate than usual. We decoded a partial location from the microtransmission. It correlates with one of your old field training sites. Camila stiffened. Which one? Raven's Crest. Thomas didn't know the name, but he felt the weight it carried by the way Camila's breath stilled. She whispered, he chose that place intentionally. The commander nodded. Because you completed your final evaluation there. Together. Thomas glanced between them. What happened at Raven's Crest? Camila replied, voice low. It was where Spectre 03 first questioned the unit's ethics. Where he asked if we were still serving a purpose, or just following orders. Her eyes darkened. It was where he began to disappear. A projection of Raven's Crest appeared, remote, high-altitude terrain framed by cliffs and dense fog. Thomas stared at the harsh landscape. And he expects us to go back there? The commander answered. It's the only way to respond without escalating the conflict. Camila added coldly. It's also exactly what he wants. Thomas turned to her. Then why follow his game? Camila finally faced him, and for the first time, he saw fear behind her controlled expression. Because if I don't, he'll escalate somewhere catastrophic. Thomas swallowed hard. So you're choosing the lesser danger. She nodded. In our world, the lesser danger is still deadly. A sudden flicker crackled across the main hologram, an image fragment, blurred and unstable. Analysts scrambled to stabilize it, and when clarity finally emerged, the room fell silent. It was a photo, a grainy image taken from a drone or hidden device. It showed Camila, years younger, standing beside a man whose face was partly shadowed but unmistakably significant. Spectre 03. Thomas felt something shift inside him, an uncomfortable twist of jealousy, empathy, and dread. He sent this? He whispered. Camila stared at the image, her expression shattering in the smallest, most devastating way. He's not reminding me of who he was, she said quietly. He's reminding me of who I was with him. The commander stepped forward. Spectre 07. We need your decision. Do we follow the trail? Camila didn't speak for several seconds. Her breathing slowed, her posture rigid, her eyes locked onto the grainy memory frozen in light. Thomas placed a hand on the table, not touching her, but grounding himself near her. "This is what he wants," Thomas said softly. "But that doesn't mean he controls what happens when we get there." Camila finally looked at him, and something unspoken passed between them, an allegiance forming in the shadows. "Prepare the transport," she said at last. "We go to Raven's Crest." The commander nodded, issuing commands across the room. As soldiers began mobilizing, Camila turned to Thomas one more time. "This place, Raven's Crest, it isn't just dangerous. It breaks people." Thomas steadied himself. "Then we don't let it break us." She examined his face, searching, assessing, almost doubting. But in the end, she gave the smallest nod, as if accepting he belonged beside her now, whether by fate or by Spectre 03's design. The chamber vibrated slightly as engines activated overhead. Their course was set, and as they walked toward the next aircraft, Thomas sensed that Raven's Crest wouldn't just reveal Spectre 03's motives. It would reveal the truth Camila had been hiding from herself. The aircraft sliced through dense clouds as it approached Raven's Crest, the engine struggling against the violent winds that constantly battered the region. Thomas pressed a hand against the window, watching the jagged cliffs rise like blackened teeth from the earth below. Mist swirled around the mountainside, moving with unnatural precision, as though the land itself resented intruders. Camila sat across from him, her posture straight, her eyes unwavering, yet the tension radiating from her was stronger than the turbulence. She wasn't afraid of the terrain. She was afraid of the memories that lived within it. Thomas felt the shift in her energy, the way her breathing had deepened to maintain control. Raven's Crest wasn't just terrain. It was a scar carved across her past. Inspector 03 wanted her to reopen it. When the aircraft landed on a narrow platform carved into the rock, icy wind tore across them like a blade. Soldiers disembarked quickly, securing the perimeter. Thomas followed Camila down the ramp, his boots slipping slightly on frost-covered metal. The altitude made the air thin and sharp, burning his lungs with every breath. Camila didn't falter. Her movements were precise, as if this unforgiving place had once been familiar to her muscles and bones. The commander joined them, pointing toward a trail etched into the cliffside. The signal originated from deeper within the ridge. A tunnel system remains from the old training facility. Camila nodded stiffly, her jaw tightening. "Then that's where he wants us." As they walked along the narrow trail, Thomas glanced at her from time to time. She didn't look at him, not because she was ignoring him, but because she was locking herself into the mindset of the soldier she once had to be. "You trained here?" Thomas asked quietly. Camila's eyes remained fixed on the path. "For months," she said. "This wasn't a place you survived with skill. You survived with will." Thomas frowned. "Inspector 03 trained here too?" She inhaled sharply. "He excelled here." The commander added. "He broke records, outperformed every metric." But something changed during the final cycle. Camila tightened her gloves, perhaps to stop her hands from trembling. Raven's Crest changed both of us. They reached the entrance of the tunnel, a dark maw carved into stone, secured by old metal beams that groaned in the wind. The interior was pitch black, swallowing the light of their headlamps as though the darkness were alive. Thomas hesitated. "You trust this?" Camila didn't hesitate at all. "It's exactly what he wants me to walk into." Which means he's prepared something deeper inside. Thomas exhaled slowly. "And we're still going in." Her gaze met his. And this time, something fragile flickered, fear she would never admit aloud. "If we don't go in," she said softly, "people will die." The commander signaled the team forward. And into the darkness they stepped. Inside, the tunnel walls were jagged, carved by both nature and human design. The sound of dripping water echoed through the passage, each drop magnifying the tension. Their footsteps crunched against gravel and ice. Thomas kept close to Camila, aware that she navigated the twists and turns with haunting familiarity. "You remember this place well?" he murmured. She nodded. "Every corner, every exit, every test." Thomas hesitated before asking, "What kind of tests?" She stopped walking, her shoulder brushing the cold stone. "Isolation, endurance, psychological exposure. They called it resilience training." Her expression darkened, but it broke people more than it strengthened them. Thomas felt his stomach twist. They reached a wider chamber supported by rusted metallic frames. The walls bore faded markings, symbols etched during past operations. Thomas ran his hand over one set of marks. "Did you make these?" Camila looked at them briefly. "Yes." He found another set lower on the wall. "And these?" Her voice softened without her permission. "Those were his." Thomas paused, his breath catching. The markings were paired, side by side. Hers and Spectre, 03's, mirroring each other like synchronized signatures. "You worked as a unit," Thomas whispered. Camila's expression hardened instantly. "We worked as partners. Nothing more." But Thomas heard the layer beneath her words. Nothing more was the truth she wanted to believe. Suddenly, the chamber lights flickered, once, twice, and then stabilized into a cold, artificial glow. The commander raised his weapon. "Movement detected," he warned. Thomas felt his pulse spike. "Is it him?" Camila scanned the corners. No, he wouldn't reveal himself yet. Then a soft mechanical whir echoed from a hidden recess. A small projector descended from the ceiling and activated. A hologram flickered to life. Thomas froze. Camila froze harder. The hologram showed a recorded image of Spectre, 03, years younger, eyes intense, voice calm as he said, "If you're here, Spectre, 07, then you're already too late." Camila's breathing hitched. Thomas felt the air leave his lungs. The hologram continued, shifting to display the two of them, Camila and Spectre, 03, in training stances, synchronizing movements during old simulations. The footage was personal, raw, intimate in a way that betrayed trust. "He kept copies of this?" Thomas murmured, horrified. Camila whispered, "No, these were sealed records. No one had access." Her voice cracked for the second time since the ordeal began. "He broke into archives meant to erase past identities." The commander cursed. "He's provoking you emotionally." Camila forced a breath. "He doesn't need to provoke me emotionally. He just needs me unsteady." Thomas moved closer, positioning himself between her and the projection, shielding her from the past staring back at her. She blinked, surprised and grateful. A final message flashed on the hologram. "Raven's Crest remembers. Do you?" Then the projection died, plunging the chamber back into partial darkness. Camila's hands curled into fists. "He's turning this place into a psychological maze," she said. "He wants me to walk through my past before I can reach him." Thomas shook his head. "No, he wants you to doubt yourself." The commander nodded. "Herrera's right. This is destabilization." Camila exhaled sharply. "We moved forward." But Thomas placed a hand gently on her forearm. "Not a Spectre, 07, he said quietly. "As you." Her breath trembled, but she nodded. They advanced deeper into the tunnels, leaving behind the echo of the hologram and the memories it had awakened. As they moved, Camila whispered under her breath, almost too soft for Thomas to hear, yet he caught it anyway. He wasn't always a ghost. Thomas looked at her, the weight of her pain pressing against his own ribs. "And you weren't always alone," he said. She glanced at him, truly glanced at him, and in her eyes he saw something rare and unguarded. Recognition. As the tunnel narrowed and the darkness thickened, Thomas realized something powerful and terrifying. Spectre, 03 wasn't the only one drawing Camila into the past. Camila herself was finding pieces of who she used to be. Pieces Spectre, 03 intended to use against her. The tunnel grew narrower as they pressed deeper into Raven's Crest, the ceiling lowering to the point where even Camila had to bow her head slightly to continue forward. The air turned colder, thick with the mineral smell of stone and the faint metallic tang of old equipment left to decay. Thomas kept close, aware that every sound, every drip of water, every shift in gravel, echoed with unnatural clarity. Camila moved with silent precision, her hand hovering near the holstered sidearm she rarely needed to use in her corporate life, but now gripped like an extension of her own body. Each step pulled her further into memories she had fought to bury. Thomas could feel the heaviness radiating from her, but he stayed beside her anyway, learning that his presence was both an anchor and a risk Spectre, 03 had anticipated. They reached a fork in the tunnel, two paths stretching in opposite directions, equally dark, equally foreboding. The commander held up a scanning device that flickered erratically. "Interference," he muttered. "He's disrupting the signal." Camila stepped forward, examining the ground. One trail bore faint impressions, footsteps smudged by dust but distinct enough to recognize. "He wants us to follow this way," she said, pointing left. Thomas frowned. "Then shouldn't we go the other direction?" Camila shook her head. "If we take the opposite route, he'll trigger whatever he set up there. He always designs both paths as traps, but one leads closer to him." Thomas swallowed. "And you can tell which." She nodded once, her eyes sharp with a soldier's instinct. "I can feel which one he wants me to choose." They followed the left tunnel, the walls narrowing until their shoulders nearly brushed the cold stone on either side. After several minutes, the passage opened into a hollowed chamber filled with abandoned training equipment, rusted weights, shattered simulation panels, and a row of metal lockers dented from long-forgotten impact tests. Thomas examined the room with a shiver. "People trained here?" Camila nodded. "We lived here." She traced a hand over one of the lockers, her gloved fingers pausing on a nearly erased engraving. Thomas stepped closer. "What does it say?" Camila exhaled deeply. "Spectre 07. Her locker. Her identity carved into metal long before she tried to erase it. Thomas watched her expression shift, pain mingling with remembrance. This room was a graveyard of who she had been. Before Thomas could speak, a faint beeping began to echo through the chamber. Slow, rhythmic, purposeful. The commander drew his weapon. "Movement." Camila held up a hand. "No, that's a device signal." She moved toward a simulation console half buried under debris. The panel flickered, struggling to activate after years of neglect. Static filled the screen before forming the outline of a familiar face. Spectre 03. Even distorted by static, his presence was chilling. "Hello, Camila," the recording said. His tone was calm, unsettlingly intimate, as though addressing her in private rather than through a trap left years after their separation. "If you're here, then you remember what this room meant. What we built here." Camila's breath hitched, but she didn't look away. The recording continued. "You were always stronger than the rest of us. You mastered resilience training quicker, endured the psychological simulations without breaking. But you never understood why I admired you." A muscle twitched in Camila's jaw. Thomas sensed the emotional blow even before she responded. "Turn it off," she muttered. The commander reached for the console, but the device flashed red, locking them out. Spectre 03's message persisted. "You were strong because you felt deeply, because you cared, and they turned that into a weakness." Thomas stared at Camila, seeing the truth in her silence. Spectre 03 wasn't just haunting her. He was exposing the wounds the unit had carved into her. The screen glitched, switching from Spectre 03's face to a montage of training footage. Camila running obstacle courses in freezing rain, her hands shaking while completing precision tasks after hours of sleep deprivation, her eyes burning with determination not to fail. Thomas's chest tightened. "They put you through this?" he whispered. Camila replied without emotion. "Everyone went through it." Spectre 03's voice returned, layered with digital distortion. "You survived because I was there. And I survived because of you." Thomas felt something sharp twist inside him. Not jealousy, but recognition. This wasn't romance. This was trauma bonding. A connection forged in conditions no human should endure. The recording shifted once more, now showing a dark corridor, somewhere deeper within Raven's Crest. Spectre 03 spoke again. "There is one place you avoided. One room you never entered after that final day. Meet me there. Finish what was left undone." The image flickered and froze, revealing a door marked with a faded emblem. Camila stepped closer, her face paling. "He's chosen the descent chamber." The commander's voice sharpened. "That room traumatized half the recruits." Camila's voice dropped to a whisper. "It nearly broke him. And it nearly broke me." Thomas felt dread coil in his gut. "Then why would he want you to go there now?" Her answer was quiet. "Because he believes that room made him who he is." A low rumble echoed through the chamber, dust falling from the ceiling as the facility trembled. "He knows we've seen the message," the commander said. "He's preparing the next stage." Camila steadied herself. "Then we move now." Thomas reached out instinctively, catching her arm before she stepped forward. "Camila, are you sure you can face this?" Her eyes met his, soft for a fraction of a second, then steeled with resolve. "I am not afraid of the room," she said. "I am afraid of who I might become inside it." Thomas felt his pulse spike. He wanted to protect her, but he knew she wasn't someone who needed protection. She needed presence, and he wouldn't leave her. They began moving toward the chamber shown in the hologram, following the directions embedded in Spectre 03's message. The tunnel sloped downward sharply, the air growing colder, heavier, almost oppressive. Thomas's legs burned as they descended, the stone steps uneven beneath his boots. Camila navigated effortlessly, as though the muscle memory of training had reawakened. This level wasn't meant for everyday operations, she said. It was reserved for extreme conditioning. Thomas's voice was tight, and he wants you to face it again. Camila nodded. Not just face it, understand it. Or rather, understand his transformation inside it. Thomas swallowed. Spectre 03 wasn't just reliving history. He was reenacting it. They reached a heavy blast door, reinforced with steel plates etched by decades of use. Faint markings covered its surface, scratches, initials, numbers, left by operatives struggling to maintain sanity in the descent chamber. Camila placed her gloved hand on the cold metal. Her breath shuddered. Thomas stepped closer, lowering his voice. Whatever happened here, you're not alone this time. She didn't move for several seconds. Then she turned, meeting his gaze with a depth he hadn't seen before. Pain, strength, and gratitude woven into one. Then let's finish what he started, she whispered. The commander input a code. The door unlocked with a slow metallic groan, and the darkness on the other side felt alive. The blast door groaned open with agonizing slowness, releasing a wave of icy air that poured over them like a warning. The darkness beyond was dense, almost physical, swallowing the beam of their flashlights as though refusing to be illuminated. Thomas felt the weight of the chamber pressing against his chest before he even stepped inside. Camila walked ahead, each stride steady but strained, her breath controlled with the precision of someone confronting a past she once vowed never to revisit. The commander signaled the team to proceed, but even the soldiers moved with caution. This room carried a reputation that lingered long after the facility had been abandoned. As Thomas crossed the threshold, a prickling sensation crept down his spine. The atmosphere was different here. He could feel it. This place had a memory. The chamber was circular, carved into the mountain like the hollowed center of a scar. The walls were lined with panels, old simulation units, sensory projectors, and psychological triggers long out of service, but still hauntingly present. Some flickered with residual power, casting dim flashes that distorted shadows across the floor. Camila's eyes swept the room with the meticulous focus of someone rewriting an old map etched into her mind. This was where we completed the final trial, she murmured. Thomas stepped closer. What kind of trial? She hesitated before answering. Isolation, sensory deprivation, emotional exposure. The goal was to strip you down to who you truly were. Her voice softened. Some never returned the same. Thomas realized then that Spectre 03 was one of them. As they advanced toward the center of the chamber, a soft hum filled the air, low, vibrating, mechanical. That device shouldn't be active, the commander muttered. Camila approached the source, a small transmitter resting on the ground, its surface scratched but functioning. She crouched beside it, examining the patterns cycling across its screen. It's broadcasting a looped signal, she said. Thomas knelt beside her, watching the symbols pulse. Is it one of his codes? She shook her head. Not a code. Her eyes darkened. A recording. Thomas's breath caught. Of what? Camila's answer sent a chill through the chamber. Of us. Of the day everything fractured. And then the transmitter activated the sequence. The chamber lights flickered violently, and a projection burst to life. Raw, grainy footage taken from the facility's old monitoring system. In the video, a younger Camila stood in the same chamber, her shoulders rigid, her breath shallow, her eyes bright with anger and fear. Opposite her stood a man, Spectre 03, his posture tense, his expression fractured between loyalty and defiance. Their voices echoed throughout the room, distorted yet painfully clear. Stop this, younger Camila demanded. It's already gone too far, he replied. You're breaking protocol. They're breaking us. Thomas felt his heart pound as he witnessed an argument that had shaped the destinies of two operatives and now threatened to shape his own. The projection intensified, replaying a moment Thomas sensed neither of them wished to relive. Younger Camila stepped toward Spectre 03, her voice trembling with restrained emotion. You can still walk away with the unit. With me. His jaw tightened. I'm done following orders that destroy people. I won't be part of their machine. She reached for him, desperation breaking through her discipline. Don't make me stop you. He stepped back. You won't. The audio distorted, but the next words cut through clearly. You're the only person who ever saw me. Camila shut her eyes as the past echoed around her, her breath shaking. Thomas felt an ache in his chest at the magnitude of what she had carried alone. The footage shifted abruptly, showing the moment Spectre 03 turned away, walking into the shadows of the same tunnel they had entered earlier. Younger Camila moved to follow, but a superior restrained her, forcing her to watch the man she had survived with disappear into darkness. The recording froze on her face, an expression Thomas had never seen before. Raw, wounded, unmasked. The chamber fell silent. Camila stared at the projection, her composure cracking in microscopic fractures. He didn't break during the trial, she whispered. He broke because he believed I chose the unit over him. Thomas stepped closer. Did you? Camila's silence was not hesitation. It was pain. Before she could respond, a faint beep echoed from the far side of the chamber. A small screen embedded in the wall flickered to life, displaying a live message. Not a recording, a communication. Spectre 03's voice filled the chamber, quiet, calm, chillingly certain. You came back. Camila stiffened, her hand instinctively moving toward her sidearm. You shouldn't be watching the past, he continued. You should be preparing for what comes next. Thomas felt the hair on his arms rise. He was close, closer than any of them had realized. The message continued. Raven's crest was a crucible. It revealed who we were and who we could become. But you ran from that truth, Camila. You buried Spectre 07 beneath corporate titles and polished floors. You forgot the world we bled to survive. Camila stepped forward, fury rippling beneath her composure. I didn't forget, she said aloud, knowing he could hear her. I chose to live. A distorted chuckle filled the room. And yet here you are, following my path. Thomas felt pressure building, like the air itself recoiled from Spectre 03's voice. This wasn't just a confrontation. It was a reckoning. You brought him. Spectre 03 continued, his tone shifting. The mechanic. The anomaly. Thomas's pulse quickened. He sees patterns the world ignores. Just like you once did. Camila clenched her fists. Leave him out of this. Spectre 03 ignored the command. He is unpredictable, and unpredictability exposes truth. That is why he matters. Thomas's breath faltered as the implications sunk in. Spectre 03 hadn't miscalculated him. He had chosen him, just as he had once chosen Camila. The screen dimmed, and one final message appeared. If you want the truth, Spectre 07, step outside. Alone. The chamber fell dead silent. Thomas's pulse roared in his ears. The commander shook his head immediately. It's a trap. Camila exhaled slowly, her expression torn between resolve and dread. Every path in this place is a trap. Thomas stepped in front of her. You're not going out there alone. Camila looked at him, truly looked, her walls trembling. Thomas, she whispered, if he wants me, he will come for you too. He didn't move. Then let him try. And with those words, they stepped together toward the entrance of the chamber, straight into the hands of a ghost waiting in the dark. As Camila and Thomas stepped toward the mouth of the chamber, the cold mountain wind cut across them like a reminder of how thin the line between past and present had become. The darkness outside pulsed with quiet tension, each shadow a potential echo of Spectre 03 waiting to emerge. Camila steadied her breath, the weight of old wounds and unfinished endings tightening around her like a second skin, while Thomas walked beside her with a courage born not of training, but of choice. The commander signaled his team to hold position, knowing this confrontation belonged to the two who had been forged and fractured by the same brutal history. The air tasted of iron and truth as they crossed the threshold, guided not by certainty, but by resolve. And in that fragile silence, one truth crystallized. The past they were about to face would change not only who they were, but who they would become. For the first time, Camila was not stepping into the darkness as Spectre 07, but as herself. And the darkness answered.